Bonsoir à tous.
Good evening, everybody. Good evening, everybody.
Nous voici réunis
So,
pour notre
here we are again for our
webinaire,
traditional
de fin juillet où nous allons
end of
vous
July
présenter,
webinar to present
les résultats du groupe.
the group's
Alors,
results for the
d'abord,
first half. First of all,
un clin d'œil
a word
appuyé, à nos
about
salariés
our employees
qui ont réussi
who have
l'exploit, il faut
achieved
le
an
dire,
extraordinary
de battre à nouveau
performance,
le record de
once
chiffre
again
d'affaires et de
beating
résultats,
the
de l'année
record
dernière
of
à la même
turnover
époque.
and profit for last
Et,
year at the same time.
C'était extrêmement difficile à
Really
réaliser
difficult to
puisque
do, of
nous
course,
avions fait
because
l'année dernière une progression
last year
très
we had
importante.
very big growth,
Et
of course,
rappelez-vous, nous avions
and
anticipé
I would
les
remind you that
difficultés
we
en disant
anticipated difficulties
l'année
ahead,
prochaine sera
saying
difficile.
that next year was going to be difficult, and
Le
yet
chiffre
here we
est
are.
encore supérieur, les résultats, on
Turnover
verra
is
tout à
higher,
l'heure avec
profit is
Patricia,
higher,
sont
as we'll
encore
see
supérieurs.
later with
Bravo à eux,
Patricia.
à tous
So
nos
well done to
salariés
them, all our
qui ont
employees
travaillé dans un
who've
contexte
worked in a
difficile,
really difficult
chaotique,
and
et ça,
chaotic
depuis 2
situation,
ans. Donc,
and it's been going on
c'est
for a couple of years, so it's particularly
remarquable.
really
Un petit
remarkable
rappel aussi
performance,
sur
so thanks to
l'effet
them.
que nous avions constaté
And but a
durant
reminder
le deuxième
of
trimestre 2021,
facts that what we saw during the second half of 21,
de nos clients,
where we anticipated orders from our
d'une
customers
certaine façon amortir les hausses de
in
prix.
order to
Et nous avons
amortize
estimé à peu près cette
price
anticipation
increases.
de commande l'année dernière à 4 millions d'euros.
We estimated that at
4
4
millions
million
d'euros,
euros,
aurait dû
and
normalement
that
être
should have
facturé
been
au
invoiced
troisième trimestre
during the
2021.
third
Ça n'a
quarter
pas
of
été le
21,
cas,
and that
et ce
wasn't
qui
the
rendait
case,
la tâche encore
and
plus
which made
difficile cette année.
our job even more difficult this year.
Et puis une dernière chose,
One last thing.
Un dernier clin d'œil, ça fait maintenant plusieurs mois.
For several
On
months,
regarde le chiffre d'affaires
we look
du
at
groupe
turnover of the group over
Nous
12
dépassons les 500 millions d'euros facturés.
sliding
Et
months.
donc,
We're
c'est une barre symbolique que
where
nous soulignons dans
we've gone
notre
past
lettre d'actionnaire.
the threshold of
Nous
500
sommes
million
maintenant,
euros
735
constantly.
personnes
So
dans le
there's
groupe
now
Thermador,
735 people in the group,
identique
and that's more or less the
par rapport à
same
la fin du
as
premier
the
trimestre
end of
de cette
the
année.
first quarter of this
L'essentiel
year.
des recrutements,
Most of
s'est
recruitments
déroulé sur
took
ce
place
premier
during the
trimestre,
first 3
sachant
months
que
of the
nous avions
year,
terminé l'année dernière à 700
given that at the end of last year there were 712 of
Un
us.
regard synthétique sur le chiffre d'affaires.
So we're going to look at
Vous avez
turnover.
ce chiffre d'affaires
So you have
détaillé par
the
filiale
detail
dans la
by
lettre
channel,
numéro 107.
and you
Vous
saw
avez
that
reçu
in the
soit
letter,
par courrier,
letter number
soit,
107 that
en
you
version
received
digitale, hier soir.
either digitally or
Et
by post.
nous présentons ce soir
And tonight
une
we're
version
presenting
simplifiée
a
avec
simplified version of those
deux
results with 2
canaux de distribution majeurs,
major distribution
le canal
channels.
grand public
Retail, first of all,
qui souffre,
which is suffering at the
qui a
moment,
souffert
of
au premier
course.
trimestre, mais qui continue
A
à
hard
souffrir, qui va
first
sans doute
quarter,
souffrir toute
a
l'année,
hard
c'est
second quarter,
pas
and it's going to be
vraiment une
hard all
surprise,
year, not really a
avec une
surprise,
baisse de chiffre d'affaires
with a
de
drop in
5,1%
turnover
sur
of
les 4
5.1%
enseignes
for the
du groupe
4
dans ce
companies in
canal.
the group in that channel.
Alors, on a quand même mis un rappel par rapport à 2019 pour
So
montrer que
we've referred
même
back
si
to
nous baissons cette année, les
2019,
progressions ont été telles
and even though there's a
en
drop this
2021
year,
que nous avons encore un peu d'avance,
we're still ahead of
c'est
the
moins qu'on puisse dire, sur
2019
2019. Donc, la
figures.
situation n'est pas catastrophique,
So it's
mais
not
c'est
catastrophic
vrai que
situation, it's plus
ça fait
23.8%,
jamais plaisir d'avoir des baisses de chiffre
but
d'affaires.
of course it's never good to
C'est
have a drop in
particulièrement
turnover.
vrai, pour les
And
gros
it's particularly
matériels, et
true
donc,
for heavy
pour
equipment.
Mecafer,
So for
parce que
Mecafer,
les Français aujourd'hui réfléchissent à deux
French
fois
people are
avant
thinking
d'investir dans un
twice
matériel
before investing in heavy
coûteux,
and slightly more expensive
comparé
equipment
d'une robinetterie sanitaire qui peut se changer
compared to
facilement. Dans le domaine
sanitary
professionnel,
fittings.
là, la progression
Second
se
sector
poursuit.
is the pro sector, of course, and that continues its growth, and we'll see later on. And that's partly thanks to energy efficiency refurbishment, growth of more than 13% over the first half, and very substantial progression since 2019, 58.8%. So we've got an overall growth in turnover of 9.4% for the first half year. So now a look at organic growth of the group per quarter. And we're looking backwards over a period of 5 years, back to 2018. Those 5 years per quarter, and very clearly we see the crisis, the COVID crisis in Q1 and Q2 2020, and the recovery in 21 with extraordinary performances in 21, because in the second quarter of 2021 we had growth above 40%, which was really remarkable. And yet we continue to grow this year. Quite strong growth, really, mostly helped, of course, by high levels of inflation, as we'll talk about in a moment. So in terms of milestones for this half year, so energy efficiency refurbishment of buildings, it's a good thing because Thermador Groupe subsidiaries, and its oldest in particular, Thermador, is very well placed on this market for components and equipment for energy efficiency. And we continue to enjoy the benefits of this MaPrimeRénov subsidiary from the government and the CEE program. So we continue to get good results. This is equipment, of course, to do with heat pumps, but also solar water tanks as well, and we'll talk about that a bit later as well. So the war in Ukraine, it's of course a major event of this year. We've already talked about it. The impact on the short-term impact on the group is low, of course, but in medium term, obviously, the worry is that it's going to have an impact on the economy more generally, and on, of course, on energy. In Thermador Groupe, we set up a sustainable development unit, a small team, which will be located in the holding company and will be there to help our subsidiaries to achieve our shared objectives in terms of sustainable development. And of course, it's everybody's responsibility, and all our employees and all our subsidiaries have to act. So this small team is led by a sustainable development director who arrived on the 1st of June, and that's Caroline Desplat-Coty. So welcome to her, but I've already been able to say that to her face to face a few times. And she is being assisted by two people, Nicolas Klein, who's been in Thermador Groupe for 3.5 years, and who was at first at Sferaco as a quality engineer, and he'll be working with that team in this new sustainable development team in his capacity as a quality engineer to help the subsidiaries to achieve their ISO 9001 and ISO 14001 challenges, and of course the other challenges in terms of carbon footprint that the whole group faces. So there's also Benjamin Lison in that team, and he currently works at iCare Consultants, but he is working half-time for us. And iCare is a consultant who's been working with us, accompanying us for sustainable development, and they're specialized in that area. And Benjamin will be helping us particularly in terms of eco-design. He's already worked on co-design projects with many of our subsidiaries on our products. Another milestone is, of course, the increase in prices. I've been in the group since 1999 and I've never seen this before. 11.4% in prices that are being passed on to our customers. It's a real a shock in terms of inflation, but we've managed more or less to pass on all those price rises to the market. Acquisition of a new company, AFI, specialized in the sale of connectors made of steel and cast iron, but also steel flanges, and it's a perfect range to supplement Sferaco's product range. So welcome to AFI and their 8 employees who are now employees of Sferaco. So for information, the acquisition was financed in cash at a price of 1.5 million. And Patricia reminded me before that it wasn't the purchase of a company, but the purchase of their business and of their property. So increase in stock is also one of the key factors of this first half year. And as you see on this slide, in a period of 12 months, we've increased our amount of stock from 142 days to 204 days. The fact is, last June we were low in stock. Now we've got high levels of stock, and Patricia will talk to you a bit about that later on. So now we're going to talk about our markets, our customers. You know these two indicators. The FNAS indicator, which is the figures for sales in the sanitation heating sector. And you see, since through 2021, 2022, it's all green, everything is in growth. And even though the beginning of the year was pretty strong, January, February, etc., it's more modest now and needs to be considered against the question of inflation. And I think that its value, the inflation levels that they're passing on must be similar to ours, i.e. 11%-ish. But there's a slowdown, as you see at the end of the right-hand side. And then the second index is Brico-Brief, and this is more the DIY market, retail market. And of course, as you see, there it's negative, and it's been negative for a few months. A little bit of a recovery in May because of gardening and the new season, gardening season, but it's again down, and that explains the drop in turnover of some of those subsidiaries who work on those DIY markets. Now looking at new house builds in France, if we were to focus on the housing, the planning permission that have been authorized, then we could be seeing a very positive vision, because there's 500,000 applications have been accepted. But as you see, there's a large gap between the housing units have been started, i.e. of 100,000 units. But what is slightly worrying about this is that we see that gap has actually widened between the housing units authorized and the housing units started, and that orange graph is pretty flat. So we continue to see planning permission authorized, but no real movement on the construction market. We've got high levels of inflation, of course. People face problems funding their projects because the prices have increased. And there are problems also in the construction industry to find employees. So we're imagining difficult times ahead in the new housing market, which that could, of course, affect two of our subsidiaries, PB Tube and Thermador, who are the most involved in those markets. So industry in France is still at a level above 2021, because this index is varying around 50. If it's above 50, we're okay. If we're below 50, it's not okay. But now we're above 50, but it's on a downward trend. Not really a surprise during this current situation and with the inflation and the situation in Europe. And if we look at the curve, that's France. And if we look at the curve for Europe, you see again this recent downward trend, and that could, of course, affect Savco, which is our export subsidiary. I'm going to hand over to Patricia, and with her charming smile, she'll be talking to us about the group's financial situation, which is excellent. Patricia, over to you. Thank you, Guillaume. So, in terms of figures and our profit. We have got a great increase in profit, which is during a period which has been marked by these difficult events that we talked about: inflation, the crisis in the war in Ukraine, tensions in terms of supply chain. So in spite of these events, we've actually got a good result, with a net profit, which is above 30 million euros. And if we look at the figures, we've been able to maintain our profitability. If we look at our ratio of net profit to turnover, we're at 10.7%, so that's a good level. So how do we explain that success? Well, first of all, turnover is up, of course, because of inflation, and so that explains part of the amount that we've passed on to, of course, what we've been able to pass on to the customer, 11.7%. But we have lost some volume, but the turnover is up, and which was challenging to achieve compared to the end of June 2021. If we look at the operating result, the operating margin, we see that the impact of inflation that we partly passed on to our customers, because the operating income is up 5.6%. So it's lower than the increase in turnover, the turnover increase. So our margins are down, and the sales margins are down compared to June 2021. And this is due mostly to the DIY sector. There's tensions in terms of consumption and demand, and an increase in prices for their purchasing prices. And the problem of the dollar, we buy in dollars, so dollars unfavorable against the euro, and the price increases from their purchases in the retail sector take a long time to feed through to the shop shelves. So if we look at the professional channel, in contrast, the margin is constant because we're able to pass on the price increases to, we've got what we call pricing power, which allows us to pass the price rises on to the customers. So that's clear from this first quarter, half year's performance. So net profit as a proportion of the group, which is increased by 9.2%, which is in line with the increase in turnover, you see, which was 9.4%. We've benefited from a drop in corporation tax, which was down from 27.5% to 25%. In all the countries where we are based, we've got a lower rate, and that's helped us to save some money in terms of taxes, down from 27.5% to 25%. And also, we did make a claim back to the tax authorities, which we won, and that was a little bonus as well, which has helped us. That was 300,000 euros, so it doesn't explain all of that good performance. There are several elements that explain it. So we're going to move on to the financial situation of the company. So, as Guillaume said, at the end of June, we have a high level of stock, so 204 days of stock. We saw that at the end of 2021 because we were at 201 days then, and we were anticipating a drop in that number of days. That wasn't the case. There's several elements that explain that. In terms of the startup in the watering season, it didn't happen as quickly or to the extent that we expected. So we have the stock which we didn't sell, and delivery times were longer than we thought. So we've got some of that stock on our hands. The second element is the increase in inflation, of course, the increase in prices from our suppliers. in terms of purchasing. So for equivalent number of elements, of course, the value of the stock is higher because it costs more, 184.3 million, you see in the figures. And we ordered more to avoid stock outs because of the problems of supply chain with China, because there was their lockdown over there and delays in deliveries. So we did order more than we would normally have done, so that explains this high level of stock. It's all linked to our objective of improving quality of service to our customers, and we wanted to avoid the stock outs that we had in 2021. I think we've got 1,250 stock out items compared to the end of September. It's a lower figure, so we're improving in terms of stock of availability of products. So in terms of turnover, there's no loss of turnover, because it's actually purchases that happen later simply. So value of the stock 184.3 million. So it has a direct effect on our cash position. So we've got a negative cash position of 15 million. So we're funding our stock. We've paid dividends in April, of course. We continue to reimburse our loans at the beginning of the year, and also we've had capex investments in property and logistics for our subsidiary FG Inox, and of course that goes to explain this minus 15.2 million euro figure. At the end of June, traditionally it's always the lowest level of cash, because we are purchasing for the second half of the year, where we have high turnover in June, July, August, September. So we buy, and of course we get paid by our customers later, 60 days. So mechanically, it's actually our lowest point in terms of cash position. Then we're going to talk about our financial debt, 19.2 million, and that's it's to do with loans, fixed rates. So in terms of this current situation where interest rates are going up, it's good to have this clarity in terms of what we're going to be paying back over the coming years, and plus the first loans will be coming to the end of repayment at the end of 2022. So that allows us, that will free up investment capacity if we needed that. So all that cash and financial debt needs to be put in relation to equity, which is over 290 million. So we've got good reserves from our profit, so we've got a strong position there in terms of equity, and that allows us to, gives us a good scoring in terms of the financial institutions, the Banque de France and the banks. It gives us a good reputation, as it were, and that means that we can rely on them to finance us in the future. So I'm going to the next slide. So we talked about cash before, so we financed investments. They were planned, capex investment. So 2.2 million investment in property, with works that have been completed during the first half of the year. So FG Inox as well, Accélère as well. They moved in March into their new offices, and we started the works in renovating a building, and we'll be introducing energy renovation and refurbishment in those buildings using thermocomb products, for example, with their ceiling panels, their ceiling heating and cooling panels, and we're attempting to use our products that we make and and benefiting from the energy efficiency certificates. And so Thermador Groupe has increased in the subsidiary Thermador has now got 24 employees, and we've got the Sustainable Development Unit, and we're building new offices for Thermador Groupe, for the group unit, and Opaline is also a beneficiary because we're refurbishing their offices at the moment. So those are the capital investments, 2.2 of euros, 1.7 million for FG Inox for their automated warehouse, and at the beginning of June that started up. And then in terms of, it's about cash again and our financing requirements. We have our customer receivables, so an increase in customer receivables, normal because we have higher turnover, and we keep an eye on that because we keep an eye on repayment periods to be sure that our customers honour the payments of their bills, and that's one of the points that we keep an eye on with some customers which have used the government loan. So our finance team used the government loan during the COVID crisis. So our teams remain vigilant on those companies to make sure they pay. So supplier debt, trade payables, that's increased, of course, with the increase in our business levels and the increase in stock levels. So we maintain supplier debt and payment periods which are in keeping with our commitments. I'm going to pass over to Guillaume for the prospects chapter of our presentation. So just a few points here: middle, medium and long term. Over 5 years, good prospects in France in terms of the construction industry, and you know that represents almost 50% of the group's business. And again, to equip buildings with innovative solutions in terms of energy efficiency for the production of hot domestic water, but also for heating. So energy efficiency refurbishment remains a major theme for us and for a long time to come. As you've probably read, we have 5 million what we call thermal sieves, so thermally inefficient to build buildings. So longer term, probably 10-year horizon, industry will, for Thermador Groupe, be a key development theme, because our market share in Europe, in terms of export, of course, are relatively low. So there's a lot to be done in that area, and our market shares in industry in France are today substantial, but we do think that we can progress. So that's a 10-year timeline based on the development in industrial valves. So France, Europe, but also that could be longer term, it could be Africa, where we already have a start of some turnover and some contacts, visits, commercial visits to African countries, and we hope that that continent will produce business for us in the future, of course, because it is close to Europe. So prospects in retail, not good in the short term, especially in terms of growth. We think 2022 is going to be difficult. We don't expect an extraordinary recovery in 2023 because of inflation and because of problems of buying power for consumers, and that will affect materials, expensive materials, but should we say more expensive equipment like compressors than simple equipment that we have to change because you need to, like valves and sanitation fittings. COVID in China has had impact on delivery times, but as you've seen in terms of stock, we've been able to build up our stock and provide the products from it. It's difficult to know what's going to happen in the months and years ahead in China as to how they deal with the pandemic. The direct consequence for the group is an increase in stock levels to limit the risks of stockouts. Unfortunately, the war in Ukraine is going to be a subject for a long time. And even though short term there hasn't been a great impact on Thermador Groupe, I think in medium term there could be an impact just on the economy in general, but also in certain countries which are close to Ukraine and of course do business with them. So sourcing, I talked about sourcing from China, but we buy in Europe with issues of sourcing difficulties with certain materials, which for example contain electronic components, and we've seen that those tend to be difficult and tend to go out of stock. So we get deliveries really on a drip feed mode. So we have to be careful about that, and our teams are working on that subject, the subject of sourcing, very closely. So inflation and margins, there are two subjects that are obviously linked. Inflation, we think that inflation that's going to slow down. Inflation is going to slow down, and we think the average inflation in the Thermador Group by the end of the year will be lower than the 11.4% that we've seen thus far. In 2021, the average over 12 months was 4.3%, and we think that we've actually reached the peak, and this is going to drop. But longer term, probably we're looking at inflation, structural inflation, because energy is expenses, of course, and we could be facing the impacts of greening of the economy, which of course is expensive, and so the long-term outlook is sustained inflation. So in terms of margins, our subsidiaries have been able to pass on price increases during this first half of the year. Still remains a lot to be done in B2B, but also particularly in B2C, and we hope that our B2C subsidiaries will manage to recover some margin over the second half of the year, and after the difficulties they face because of inflation. And a last word about acquisitions. So we've acquired AFY in this first half of the year, and we still have contacts with companies which may be up for sale, maybe wanting to join Thermador Groupe. So those are cases we continue to look at, but of course with close attention and with great prudence. And these are decisions we take collectively between the CEOs of the group, but also asking our directors to give their position, to give their opinions on these projects, because of course they impact the group. It's important for the group, and we want to have a relative majority of within the board of directors to decide such acquisitions. So we finished with our presentation. We're going to go straight to your questions. Welcome to all of you. some of you have joined during the webinar. 60 people, which is a great score for a Friday evening, the last Friday evening of July. Patricia's almost on holiday already. That's why she's smiling so much today. So it's great to see how many people are with us today. We've got employees on, people there at the beginning of the company, individual and private investors, institutional investors, French people and foreigners. So thank you to all of you for being with us and for sending your questions. And as we normally do, we're going to look at your questions. So Patricia has no questions in English. I've got questions in French. So what's your exposure, and in terms of maybe even being out of gas next winter? So we are exposed to gas, but at a very low level in the short term. If we imagine that delivery to France of gas dropped 20%, or if the French were really disciplined and everybody put their thermostat at 90 degrees instead of 22, of course that would reduce consumption, and that would be less pressure on gas boilers. And we could imagine that maintenance could be a little less, so fewer parts sold, a little less replacement. But I don't think the impact will be so great, because increasingly housing in France is equipped with heat pumps, which of course require electricity. Yeah, so this question, in our buildings, there's lots of logistics in our buildings, and they're not heated, they're just kept at a certain temperature, so we haven't got a great energy consumption. So we are working to improve insulation in those buildings in order to be able to keep decent temperatures, not negative temperatures. So imagine if there was restrictions of gas, we would still be able to work in acceptable, under decent conditions. So an impact which could be substantial in terms of gas would be more linked to our suppliers, and those, particularly the Italian suppliers who use gas in their metal processes. So it's an increase in of gas, there's an increase in product, so maybe there'll be inflation in those supplies too. And a part of the inflation increase that we've recorded does take into account energy inflation. We imagine that gas could even increase higher than it is today, so we'll see what happens. So a question from Jean-Pierre: how do you manage to increase your stocks so quickly? So Patricia and I, we did nothing. The purchasing departments in the subsidiaries, it's their hard work which allowed us to get these deliveries. And I would say that it's just because they're very professional, and so I take the opportunity to thank them. They're really in key positions, like all our employees. And of course it's linked to the history that we built with our suppliers. We've got a past with our suppliers, and during difficult periods like this, our suppliers would tend to prioritize us because they know us well, because we've been loyal to them, and because of the story that we built together. And then a question from Paul, and he congratulates us for our solid results, and he talks about Africa. Do you believe that there's a possibility of organic growth in Africa, or are you imagining acquisitions there? So, since quite honestly we have no projects in acquisitions, having such acquisitions in third-party countries, not in France, is a bit risky, and we would always go very, very carefully before purchasing in Africa. I think over the next 10 years, we're looking more at organic growth in Africa. And it asks us to look at M&A, that's in French, that's mergers and acquisitions. There are a number of projects that we have on the table with our board and the independent board members. So Jean-Pierre asks, are you suffering pressure internally in terms of new recruits or salaries? Yeah, so we're continually vigilant. Yeah, we've noted since the beginning of the year there's been a pressure in terms of salary requests, and the candidates that we might want to recruit. And we started increasing salary at the end of last year. We continued to increase them over the first half year, and we keep a very close eye on purchasing power for employees. So the two of us are responsible for the holding, Thermador Groupe, and we accompany our employees during this period, and each subsidiary does the same. They steer their salary policy. The idea is, of course, to ensure that our employees don't suffer too much from this inflation, because those who come to work by car and because they don't have any other choice, they're impacted directly, of course. And we've also got a sustainable mobility bonus. It's not direct salary, but it can be a means of helping people protect their buying power. So we use a law which allows the employer to offer employees a bonus, which is not subject to tax, either in terms of charges or the employee's income tax. So it's an amount which is limited, €500 a month. Last year we worked with Thermador Groupe, which is a transverse cross-departmental group which brings together several employees from the different subsidiaries, and with the CAPI, which is a local authority. We're looking at how we could imagine the future development of transport in the future. And so if an employee comes with what we call soft travel by on scooter, by foot, on bicycle, there's a sort of reward for those people, and they get a bonus at the end of the year, which is €500, and it can be €500 every year. And so we set that up, and we're developing that program. We've also got a car sharing application available, so that employees are able to share information and find car shares between their colleagues, and therefore limit expenditure in terms of fuel. What will Patricia be taking away with her on holiday? Please don't try and contact her. She will be uncontactable. Next. So congratulations from Louis Claude. Congratulations for your management at Zobrist. We're expecting a big change in economic system in Thermador. Can be attractive in terms of transformation of the economy towards a greener economy. Given your management and your Air Liquide model, because investors, private investors, see Air Liquide as a model, and we respect that model, of course, and we chose it as a model, to be honest. And that's a model which allows to protect the company against a buyout. But I don't think we are really exposed to that risk. We're in a very specific kind of business. It's a distribution business in a specific location, which makes it difficult to purchase us, and it's difficult to sell us, in fact. A question from Patrice. Patrice Leponeur, who's a major player in the group because he pilots the Domac activity in Vierzon. He asks us, what will we do if the government asks us to increase salaries? Bruno Le Maire said this week companies have to increase their salaries, but you have to the salaries of their employees. We don't have any specific lessons learned from the public authorities. We prefer to take our own responsibilities, and as we said earlier on, we want to raise awareness amongst our subsidiary CEOs to keep an eye on it, that's all. So a question of Dominique. With the drop in demand, the drop in price of certain raw materials, that's what we're starting to see actually in June, July. Do you think that you'll be able to pass on stock depreciation to the second half year? So at the end of the first half year, we do a review of the accounts and of our stock levels, and we look at the depreciation which can be done. So the quality of stock is there. There's no aging phenomenon which can be used because there's no use by date, as it were, on our products. So the level of depreciation is linked to just the non-sellable nature of the quantity of stock that's there. So the fact that we have impacts in terms of prices, okay, there could be a drop in the margins, but we can't apply amortization depreciation because the stock won't be below the cost price, which is not the case. Dominique's talking about in the case of drop in prices, it's not depreciation that will be involved there. If prices go down for certain materials, and we accompany our customers in order to remain competitive, we'll be able to remind them that during the difficult years, when they were looking for products that were difficult to get hold of, we were there. So the price impacts the commercial margin, of course. So we can make sacrifices, they can make sacrifices to renew stock, better prices, but in any case there'll be no depreciation, and if there is, we'll see it'll impact the commercial margin. So we've run out of questions, but of course it's now 10 to 7. I don't have any more questions. There's just one thing I wanted to say in terms of what Patricia was saying about the number of items. She said there was 1,250 stockouts, but that you have to set that against the number of references we have, which is 75,000 references. So it's only 2.5% of 2.5%. So it's just a lag in orders. It concerns supplies from Europe and from Asia. It's not just Chinese deliveries. And it can be just that there's a surge in demand for a certain item, and we get a lag in orders and supplies. Orders and deliveries, deliveries. So the questions are finished. I'll put another little focus on energy efficiency. I forgot to mention some of the products we sell in this area. So heat pumps, solar water heaters. We're not talking about panels built in Asia, but hydraulic panels built in Europe. But in PV tube and thermocomb, we've got our cooling and heating ceilings. They're highly energy efficient. Accélère, we've got double flow systems for savings. At Spherical, we've got meters, water meters, calorie counters, and they're adapted to these energy economy objectives. So you can see that those products are all very much up to date in terms of what the market is asking for. Another question from Dennis: what's the impact on dividends? It's a bit early to talk about that, but just to say we never reduced our dividend. It's something that is expected from our private shareholders, and we hope to be able to continue that good habit and have our our reputation as a company that, having launched in 1987, never having reduced its dividend over that period. So Jean-Pierre is asking me. So we need to ask Yves Rouget.
Yves, pour la rentrée, il faudra que tu nous calcules le pourcentage de tes produits vendus sous la marque Thermador.
Okay, we need to know the percentage of your products you sell under the Thermador brand. Maybe he could answer, but given the development in the product ranges at the moment and the speed of increase in turnover, I'm sorry, Jean-Pierre, I don't have the answer to that question, but we'll try and find the answer quickly. But we can say that all our trademarks are registered. Highwell. So Highwell is our English contact for this evening, who speaks perfect French, and is asking, saying to us, thank you for your results, your great work, your results. Just one point about the outlook in terms of margin, and how difficult is it to regain markets given the low volumes. I think gains in market shares we got during the COVID crisis, and when there's shortage of products. So I think, you know, the customers think, well, we were there to help them when they needed it, and now they'll remain loyal to us. Of course, market share is not the real key thing. We need to maintain for the moment what we have. So prospects in terms of margins, as I said earlier on, for the second half year, we are expecting our subsidiaries that work in retail to pass on all the increases and to make up the losses in margin that they suffered in the first half of the year. That's really the timing. In the longer term, however, I'm sorry, it's very difficult to answer your question. Jean-François answers the question. Do you think the authorities should make an exception for by the public authorities to not force people to go ahead with the renovation, the energy renovation of their buildings? So the answer would be that today the state is looking more carefully at such investments, and they want to be sure that they're financed properly. I'll give you an example. If an installer suggests a €1 solar heating which is facing towards the north, is installed north facing, of course you have to be asking yourself questions. So the public authorities have introduced restrictions, but that's not stopped the market from developing, and those heat problems need to be dealt with. So Alain, do you think you will be making provisions for increases in prices? It's a question we asked our auditor last year, and we decided not to do it. And at the end of June, we had the question came up again, and again, we don't think we will be putting any provisions in place for price increases. We do think that inflation, as Guillaume was saying, we think it's going to be will be dropping in the second half of the year. So we don't think it'll be going long term to the extent that we would have to make provisions. Robert asks us a question. I was lucky to have in my sales team when I was at PBTube, and he was very tolerant of me when I was a young manager. He asked me if we could create a Thermador financial unit to accompany young startup companies. I think we're not in the world of digital, but IO and XLR, we did accompany them financially when they started up to bring them to where they are today. So we are doing a bit of that. So it's already our role, I think, in our market, and also through the and in Spherico, there's of course there's a department that works on product solutions, and it's kind of a sort of startup feel to it, either through the subsidiaries which are new, which are created, or historic long-standing subsidiaries who can accompany the future developments of products, of product ranges, or the subsidiaries of the future. So it wouldn't really work as a financial unit within Thermador Groupe. If you remember, when we went onto the stock market, when we floated, we were called Thermador Holding. So if in the future we saw a startup outside the group who could contribute to the growth in the group, yeah, we could accompany those people. We could, of course, invest in a company like that with a long-term view, but of course, a cautious approach is always the best approach. Because, of course, it's not our money. The money belongs to our shareholders. So, Yves, thank you for contributing. The product mix at Thermador has evolved. The study of the weight of the brand and is strong. And for example, the good news is that the new solar kit Astrea is gaining in reputation as a brand. So Yves, you need to relax. He's in charge of Thermador, and all employees have done incredible efforts to get the results they've achieved and all the orders they've delivered. So it's 7 p.m. It's the end of our webinar. It's the start of Patricia's holiday, and so we wish all of you an excellent evening and very happy holidays. Thank you. Have a good evening, and see you in October.